Those are the rest of your Halloween stuff, Arpin?
We are down to arrows and Smarties in the bowl of candy we bought to give out that no one came to get.
Terrible.
Yeah.
All
or
right.
that could be a recreation of the sound of Alex Newhook hitting the end boards last night.
Yeah, I know. It was a crushing sound, and it's crushing for the Canadiens too. It's funny because sometimes we're about to start an episode, and we tend to sometimes we can galaxy brain certain topics. You and I, we've been guilty of that in the past, but sometimes, the news just happen. They fall in your lap, and you just take it. And just like that,
about to start recording.
That's right. So as we were about to start recording, bad news with Alex Newhook suffering a broken ankle, which is not entirely surprising. So they call he's had surgery, 4-month absence. Usually, I mean, it could have. In this case, it could be 3 months. Now it's 4. We'll get to the timeline in a bit, but I think what's even more surprising was the fact that nudged into this medical update by the Montreal Canadiens was the fact that Guhle was also had surgery yesterday, and basically had a partially torn adductor muscle, and that will require 8 to 10 more weeks of of rest and recuperation. So, man, that's a blow, because he had started skating again. You assume that that adductor, which is basically the inside thigh, they had chosen not to have surgery on that, and he would be healing by himself. He went on the ice on a few occasions, but then they decide he needs surgery. That's a bummer.
I mean, it is a bummer for him specifically. I mean, now I just did the math, but he's missed 77 games over his first 3 seasons. Now he's up to 12 and counting on this season. He's going to cross the 100 mark in 4 seasons with this surgery. My spidey senses should have gone off when he wasn't on the press box last night at the game, and he's been a pretty regular guy there.
Yep.
Patrick Laine was there. Kane Guhle was not.
They were there Tuesday. They were there together Tuesday.
But they've been there pretty much every game, so that should have been a hint. But anyhow, this is so. These are 2 separate things that I think we need to break down in 2 separate ways.
Sure.
So let's start with the freshest one, which is, I guess, Newhook's injury. I wrote a piece last night that I'd like to get your opinion on, because I didn't see you at the game last night and we didn't talk about it, but I don't know if I'm right or wrong here, but I kind of see Newhook's injury as definitely unfortunate, and it's really Newhook's an important player on this team. He's the only forward who plays on both special teams. He's been the engine of his line with the 2 rookies, I would argue. Just the speed element that he brings, and defensively he's improved so much. So I don't want to minimize the loss of Alex Newhook. It's a big deal and really hurts the Canadiens, but it does give them an opportunity to just try something here and sort of, going to go old school a little bit and sort of load up a top 6 and have a more, say, 2-way or sort of 2 checking lines, a traditional top 6, bottom 6 setup, and I don't know, we have often talked about strong link and weak link, and the Canadiens have never been in a position to be a strong link team. I feel like now, for once, they are. So I don't need to I don't need to do a summary of my story in the Athletic this morning, but I'm interested to hear what you think of that notion that if you put some combination of obviously Suzuki, Caulfield, Slavkovsky, Bolduc, Doc, Bolduc, who has gone now 4 straight games without a shot on goal, let alone a goal, Bolduc, Doc, and Demidov, and obviously to start, the first line would remain untouched, but you could do a lot of different interesting things with those group of 6 players. I don't know. Do you think that's the way they should go? Do you think that's the way they will go, which is 2 separate questions?
I think that's the way that they should go, because the last few games, I mean, the Canadiens had a very good game against Utah, but you can tell in the last few games, especially since Suzuki got hurt in the dying seconds of the game against Philadelphia, that first line has been less effective. They've been effective. They've been less productive, which is not the same thing.
Yes.
So they've been effective. They haven't been as productive. You could argue that shooting percentage was due to come down anyway. But when they're not producing, you look for secondary scoring. And what we've seen from the Canadiens so far this season is that you have 3 lines that are basically 3 third lines. And if you need to have a second line that can produce some offense and be relied upon to produce more offense on nights where the Suzuki line is not necessarily providing the bulk of it, well, who do you turn to? Right now, from you could look sometimes, say, oh, well, the Kapanen, Newhook, Demidov could do that. Doc had a productive week a week ago. We've discussed, the issues with the Evans line, but I feel like where I see the opportunity now is that by loading up a second line, you have the possibility to create that. And it's not as if Kirby Dach has necessarily proven that he'd be a great second line center, but honestly, right now, even Ivan Demidov is not playing great hockey, so it's not as who deserves to play with Demidov. We're not into this argument right now. So you would just look to find the best fit at this point, and if it needs sheltering them a little bit, so be it. But I think that this would be the way, having those 3 guys together, that would generate the most offense. In terms of opportunities, it's an opportunity to recreate the lines, but it's not necessarily an opportunity for a lot of other guys to add more to their responsibilities. I don't see, let's say, for example, the Newhook's injury as a chance for Joseph Veleno to increase his portfolio or anything. They called up Jared Davidson today. I fully expect Jared Davidson to take Newhook's spot on the second power play, because that's what he was good at in Laval. He's a shooter, and he's effective in that in that spot. So, I mean, I don't know. To me, they've got some solutions. They've, thankfully, with having Kapanen and Evans, they still have 4 centers, even without Newhook being there. But we'll follow the situation out of Toronto with David Kemp's contracts being terminated. But I think that if the Canadiens were able to submit him an offer and attract him to Montreal, I think it'd be a great fit at this point, and he would help compensate what you lose also with Newhook being a guy who can play center, who's a left-handed shot, who could help with a right-handed shot on his side, a guy who can play on the PK a ton. So I think that there are some guys who should not need Newhook to create some offense. They'll have their responsibility. For the power play, Davidson can take care of it for the time being, but the defensive aspect, I think you need to look outside the organization to find your fix, and you've got one right there. So that's how I see it.
Well, barring Comp signing, it's pretty obvious that this means Nick Suzuki has to go back on the penalty kill, and you still don't have a lefty-righty combination on the penalty kill if that happens. Yeah. In terms of PK1 and PK2, which is, I guess, ironic, because the other day, Marty was being asked about, him blocking that shot and just, him having that shift on the penalty kill against Kempe and muscling him off, beating him to a puck and muscling him off and setting up Dobson for, frankly, what should have been a goal. He missed the net by 2 feet or something. But anyhow, I asked Marty, is it hard to resist the temptation to put Nick on the penalty kill? He's sitting right there. Like, it's, that he's one of your better penalty killers. And he was like, yeah, it is, but I have to manage his minutes. And that applies to so many things that Marty has decided to do this year. Spreading the wealth over 3 lines offensively, with all due respect to the Evans line, that has a different identity, but he was hoping to get goals from the Kapanen unit, the Doc unit, and obviously the Suzuki unit. That is meant to manage his minutes. And why do you have to manage Nick Suzuki's minutes? Because the way the Canadiens want to play requires a lot of energy and it requires being fresh. And I think that has slipped. And it slipped a while ago. It slipped against Philly, which that's what Marty was so upset about. Alex Carrier, before the game in New Jersey, talked about the F3 not doing his job. And today, I believe Marty talked about the F3. And it's F3 is a critical part of what the Canadiens try to do, because as soon as they lose the puck, that F3, his job is to immediately pressure the puck wherever it could be found and lead to a chain reaction that will ultimately lead to a turnover and allow the Canadiens to prevent a zone entry on the other side. That hasn't been quite there. I think Marty acknowledged that that's not been quite there in terms of denying entries. It's funny, before the Kings game, I had seen some numbers from Sportlogic that suggested that their entry denial rate was actually pretty consistent over the season, which I found a little surprising. But eye test wise, it just seems like teams are gaining the Canadiens blue line a lot easier. And so this is not going to be helped by Alex Newhook's departure. I mean, this is something he does extremely well. So if they go with like a more traditional top 6, bottom 6, and the thing about Davidson is that he can fit in that, he can fit into a bottom 6 where you're asking to play more of a two-way style. We'll see what his foot speed looks like at the NHL level, and if he's able to sort of make decisions at that pace and things like that. It's a big jump. The casual assumption that scoring 9 goals in 11 games in Laval means that you're ready for the NHL could be the case, but it's not always the case. It's not necessarily a guarantee that he's ready for NHL action, but he's earned it. He's earned a chance to at least find out. And so I guess we're going to see tomorrow if he can keep up with the pace. But it seems like Budzik needs a bit of a boost. Demidov, as you mentioned, and I would agree with you, needs a bit of a boost. And it's just intriguing to me to see these 6 players deployed in a way that maximizes offense. Like Marty on Saturday morning, when asked about Budzik, was admitted that he's not done a good enough job managing ice time. Budzik was coming off a game where he played 9 minutes and 11 seconds. And, he talked about how he's never coached a team this deep. Well, now that depth has taken a major hit. And I know it's just one player, but it's an important player, and it weakens that third line. And so maybe doling out ice time will become simpler if you have 2 lines that get the bulk of their shifts in the offensive zone, and you have 2 lines who get the bulk of their shifts in the defensive zone, which is another reason why Kemp would make sense right now since he's available. And maybe simplify that whole equation that Marty admits he's been struggling with. So let's see it. And honestly, like if Doc Bolduc Demidov doesn't work, that could either lead to a case where Kapanen gets that spot.
Yes.
And he enters the top 6.
Sure.
And if that doesn't work, then you get to DEFCON 2, I guess, or whatever. Like you get to the ultimate nuclear option, which is to break up the Suzuki line and try and reconfigure or redistribute your offensive talent. So I don't think the Canadiens are there yet. But there's other things they should and will likely try before doing that. But I could see a future where, if nothing else is working, this injury could ultimately lead to that down the road.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Kapanen is positioned as the next in line if Dak falters in that role. But I mean, I don't even know if they're going to go that way. And it was, the Canadiens are rumored to be interested in Kampf. It would make perfect sense. But the fact of the matter is, they didn't know, and they, as of Friday afternoon, and it was fitting that they would have only an optional skate, and everything seems to still be up in the air as to how they would deploy their lines. Because if it's a guy that they can add, and if he doesn't sign, let's say in Vancouver or somewhere else, and he signs him with Montreal, then it's a whole different ball game, because then you can put Kapanen on the line, but do you want to keep him still in a somewhat defensive role? Because as it stands, I mean, if you do, let's say you bulk up you go back to Anderson, Evans, and Gallagher, then your fourth line becomes Veleno, Kapanen, and Davidson. They're not going to play a lot if those three are together. So,
and frankly, Evans, Anderson, and Gallagher did not look good. Like, let's be honest.
No.
When they were together, they did not look good at all.
No. So to me, if they were to, let's say, because I'm in full armchair GM mode right now, but if they were to go, let's say, if they were to sign Kampf, you could do Davidson, Evans, and Anderson, and you have like this Davidson spark, because he's got some jam. He can be a mean guy, he's not afraid to disturb, to go in front of the net and stuff like that. You would have that line, and then you'd have Kapanen, Kampf, and Gallagher, which I'd be very comfortable in using in a lot of situations, even though Kampf is almost a black hole offensively, where he's been the last few years. He's not great, but he's extremely reliable defensively. So he's got that working for him. And so you would have enough pieces to mix and match and create two lines that are both reliable in their own end and could create something offensively too. So, but again, if you end up having Kapanen with Veleno and Davidson, you cannot hope a lot from that line. So no, I would try to avoid that.
But well, I agree with you that you would mix and match on that, and it doesn't have to be Evans, Anderson, and Gallagher necessarily.
No.
But you have a group of 6 players that could fit that role. It's unfortunate for Kapanen, who's off to a great offensive start as a rookie, and maybe he would have an opportunity eventually in the top 6. But this notion of top 6, bottom 6, which was largely Marty's reality as a player throughout his career. Like most teams deployed their forwards in a top 6, bottom 6 format. It's no longer true that most teams do that. Some teams do, but most teams try to do what Marty was trying to do, which is spread the wealth and come at you in waves and play a high energy style. So, when he didn't hint, he literally said back to the drawing board after the game, it's going to take like sort of a philosophical shift, right? In terms of recognizing that, we need this one injury is forcing me to change the way I see how our team plays. And further to that, like if you're loading up 2 offensive lines and you're giving them the bulk of the offensive time and ice time starts to become a little heavily weighted towards those lines, like would they have the possibility of playing that way if their ice time becomes higher? Nick Suzuki's already playing 20 minutes a night. If that gets up to 22, 23, can you reasonably expect him to play that style of forecheck for that many minutes? Doc's been sort of eased in. He's playing, I think the last check was 13 and a bit a game, or maybe 14. Is he ready to get more? Like, I think he's been managed to some extent until now. Yeah, he's at 1352. Sorry, or he was prior to the game against Dallas. So is he ready to go up to 16, 17 a night and play at a level that can be maintained for that time? So it's a lot of, and if not, then do the Canadiens have to change the way they play because they're changing the makeup of how they deploy their lines? I don't know.
Yeah, but they can't change the way they play because they're down two forwards with Liney and Newhook not being there. Otherwise you're constantly going to change the way you play. You spend so much time on a daily basis to sell your system to your players. It should not change. But I agree with you that Nick Suzuki is already playing a lot. You were talking about the shorthand time on ice. Well, the first full season of Martin St. Louis behind the bench, Suzuki was playing on average 1 minute 39 on the PK. It went down to 58 seconds the year after. Last year it was at 38 seconds, and this year is at 33. I think you want to maintain that. If he's your fifth forward on the PK, that's good. But if he starts to get a regular shift on the PK, then it gets touchy because let's not forget that if for some reason either Veleno or Davidson doesn't work, what's the nuclear? Not nuclear, but what's the other option that spontaneously Marty will go back to on the power play? It's give Suzuki the full 2 minutes on the PP.
Yes.
So if he plays regular minutes on the PK, that he gets to play the full 2 minutes on the power play, then what's left for your 5-on-5? I think that's where they've been so effective 5-on-5, that line. These are the most crucial minutes for Nick Suzuki. So try to spare him as much as you can on the special teams. Obviously, first PP will remain. But for the rest, you can find some specialists. But we have not seen Veleno play at all on the shorthand. So we've got Kapanen. But apart from that, it's just... And down in Laval, Davidson, as far as I know, was not playing on the PK either. So
no, never really.
They're running out of options on the PK. So that's why I think that outside help might come handy at this point.
Oh, but yeah, they were already short on options, and so you lose one. And yeah, I would agree with you that in an ideal world, even though Nick Suzuki is one of their better options as a penalty killer, I would take him over Newhook. I would take him over Kapanen. I would even take him over Anderson. So, I mean, honestly, he's, in terms of just sheer quality of penalty killing, like, he is their second best penalty killer as a forward.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that there's only so much this guy can do. I asked him about the power play, and I guess we'll see if we get time. If we get to the power play being, 0 for its last 11, going back to the third period against Philly, he said something interesting. He's like, I'd like to run it off my side more. And it just kind of came out of him. And I was thinking about it. I was like, doesn't it already kind of run off your side? But I think he finds... well,
there's a lot of pressure.
He said we get caught in between. Yeah, well, I mean, you watched the Stars penalty killers last night. They had a guy on Demidov. They were basically shadowing him.
Yeah.
Not quite shadowing, but pretty damn close. Like, they were not going to let that guy get the puck in space and do the stuff that the whole league has seen. So yeah, there's, he could be asked to play on both power play units. That's for sure. We've seen that before. And so yeah, him as a penalty killer is not a great option, especially if you plan on, sort of changing the deployment of the team and giving them more minutes at this point. That does need to be managed. We should get to the Guhle news because honestly, like, the Newhook use was somewhat expected. And frankly, I think a fractured ankle is probably better than a high ankle sprain. I've heard many people mention that you'd rather break it than have a high ankle sprain because you never really quite get back from that fully. Newhook, if I'm not mistaken, has already had a high ankle sprain. So I don't know if it was the same ankle, but
so
I think that...
but in terms of timeline, there's not much difference between 3 months and 4 months because of the Olympics,
Right.
So
yeah,
it's 2-3 games basically. And he could easily be ready to play at some point during the Olympics. So it's honestly, I don't see much difference. Obviously, between 2 months and 3 months, there would have been a big difference, but
Right.
between 3 and 4, it's marginal.
Yes. Okay. That's true. That's a good point.
So Guhle.
And and it's So to Guhle, and this, I don't want to make any assumptions. I don't want to jump to conclusions, but from on the surface of it, it seems curious that just as Guhle was on the verge of returning, I think Saturday would have been 4 weeks since the Canadiens announced that he would be out 4 to 6 weeks. Just as he was on the verge of a return, he needs surgery. It's not a great look. It doesn't look like this was handled properly from the outside. Now, maybe he aggravated it skating. Maybe something happened that changed their diagnosis. But when you've almost gone through the entirety of what was supposed to be your absence, only to have surgery at the end of that period, has to be incredibly frustrating to Guhle, and is frankly one of the first cases since the change in medical regimes in Montreal where something like this has happened. But yeah, it's funny. You were there. I was talking to Arbor Jacki on Monday about Guhle's imminent return and obviously I've talked to Struble about it, and they're both very, very well aware that when Guhle comes back, one of them's going to have to sit. But credit to Arbor Jacki, like even the last 2 games when no one was really playing well, I thought he's played really well. He's improving. Yeah. And Struble, not so much. And so this is going to continue. This Struble versus Jacki thing is not, it is and it isn't, but they've just been given an 8 to 10 week runway to continue this competition for whenever Guhle gets back. So I think the Canadiens are a bit, they're a bit lucky in this sense, and this is the difference with the Newhook absence, is that they've basically been able to stay above water defensively, the last 2 games notwithstanding, but just generally with the way their defense plays, haven't missed Guhle that much. And so they do have Delgado in Laval. They have Engstrom in Laval. There's reinforcements within the organization. They're not going to need to go out and get some help the way I would agree with you they probably should in Newhook's case with Kampf just sitting there. But this has to be incredibly demoralizing for Caden Guhle. You'll recall I had a long talk with him at the beginning of training camp, and he looked at this season as being his breakout season in a way that, from a leadership point of view, from a physicality point of view, just providing what this team needs more of. He was putting it on his shoulders to provide that. And here he is out again. It's not going to quiet the people who feel he's injury prone, because at this point it's hard to argue otherwise. And it's just it's a big blow. It's a bigger blow for him than it is for the Canadiens. I think it really is a big blow for Caden Guhle and his mental state and who he hopes to become as an NHL player that continues being delayed over and over again. And this last one being, again, from the outside without all the details, but this last one seeming like a mishandled injury.
Yeah. It's hard to tell from the outside, though. I mean,
it is.
We can
only work with the information we have.
Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, is it a different injury? That's also possible, but it's clear, looking at the replay on how he got hurt, it clearly looked like
the doctor makes sense.
A doctor makes plenty of sense.
Yes.
So yeah, and they must have thought that because there are different grades to that injury, and usually when it's at a grade 2, like a moderate tear, you can just heal it, and 4 to 6 week really fits into that category. But if at the end it's nothing's fixed, and you turn to surgery, then his whole season has gone in shambles. And yeah, that sucks, because you say it hurts more the player than the team. Yeah, of course, on a personal level, I feel for Guhle, but the Canadiens need that player. How long can they
Of course they
continue
do.
to
Yeah.
put so much pressure on Mike Matheson and Noah Dobson, and ask those guys to fill some of the defensive responsibilities that first and foremost should be going to Caden Guhle? That's it's really unfortunate, and I think in the development arc of this team, he's also a guy who fits right in terms of age, and his development is meant to go with the arc of the Suzukis and the Caulfields and the Slavkovskis and the other ones, So
Mm-hmm.
having him not being there again, I wonder if at some point, he'll start questioning his own way of playing and say, okay, well, because guys go back, they want to play freely without ever thinking, but it's if you keep getting injured, will it put on the brakes at some point, in certain actions?
Well, I mean, this one wasn't a result of him getting hit or even delivering a hit, really. I mean, he was involved in like an altercation along the boards, like it was like a battle of some sort. Like, but it wasn't like this is almost more concerning because it was just through the normal run of play.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you tear an adductor, assuming that that's what the original injury was. I suppose there's a chance it wasn't, but I have trouble. I have trouble seeing him tearing his adductor in rehab. Maybe he did. I don't know, but it's going to create a lot of doubt in his mind because his inability to remain healthy already occupies a big part of his brain. And the last 2 summers, has actively worked in the off season to avoid injury. And 2 summers ago, it was him taking hits, like literally asking people to come to the rink and hit him so he can learn how to take a check. And last summer, it was him and Doc getting in the gym, and he wanted to bulk up because he wanted to be that physical presence for this team, and felt like maybe that was the reason he was getting hurt. And frankly, maybe that's the reason he did get hurt, because maybe it had the adverse effect, all the muscle work he did over the summer. Maybe that's, who knows? I don't want to speculate, but all I know is that he has been focused for 2 off seasons on avoiding injury.
Yeah.
And yes, he is a vitally important part of this entire build. He is, when healthy, would have probably been one of the league's best contracts. If you were able to remain healthy, 6 years at $5.5 million a year, if you're getting a 22-minute a night, tough, physical, penalty killing defenseman who's actually a decent puck mover and has good mobility, like this is gold, And so it's really unfortunate. I feel for him, honestly. Like it's got to be mentally tormenting to him right now that this has happened again. And just to repeat, 77 games in his first 3 years, 12 now. He should be back somewhere mid to late January.
Yeah.
And
second or third week of January, something like that.
Yeah. So hopefully this goes well for him. It's a bummer for Caden Guhle for sure.
Yeah. Okay. So the Canadiens just played 2 games that were a bit disheartening. They played 2.
They allowed 12 straight goals.
Yeah.
On home ice. A bit disheartening is a bit of an understatement. Yes.
Well, I know, but I thought, things all fell apart against Dallas, but they had played a very good first period. It's just once they just couldn't stop the floodgates once they opened, After the second, the third goal, they should have been able to say, okay, that's enough. And they weren't able to do that. I thought that the game against the Kings was not a good game at all. They were not given a lot, but they were not able to accomplish much either with what they were given. And honestly, it's been apart from the game against Utah, it's been tough go these last few games. So we hear about a lack of execution. On the one hand, the shooting percentage was meant to come down. You could not ride on the power play for 25% the whole year. It's just not sustainable. And maybe that some of those opportunities that the Canadiens have missed on grade A chances, just missing the net, is either part of that or a sign that as Marty put it last night, that they're losing their mojo right now.
Yeah.
But I'm not catastrophized. No, I'm not.
No.
I'm not too worried. I mean, it's ebbs and flows of the season, and I'm okay with the fact that they're going through a tough spot. It's normal. This is not a top of the Atlantic Montreal Canadiens team, not yet. I think that they're a playoff team, but a playoff team means that at some point you're going to go through those rough patches. They need to figure it out, and they need some of their best guys to step up. But all of a sudden, everything that seemed to click early on, it just doesn't anymore. And it's funny because I read the comments. Maybe I should not, but I read the comments. And I know that some people were saying, "Oh, you guys are negative nillies, and everything's going so well, and yet you find the negative." And there were some telling signs, that some red flags, and we dared mentioning them. Now it's revealing that it turned out to be true. But as much as they were not as good as their record suggested after 10, 12 games, I don't think they're as bad as the current slump that they're in right now. And I don't expect them to take 8 or 10 games as in years prior to come out of it.
No. Well, I think what I've seen in the last 2 games is that I've never, not never, that's a bit much, but you rarely see an NHL team collectively completely lose the ability to handle the puck, whether that's a pass, whether that's receiving a pass, giving a pass, or just stick handling. How all of their skill players, honestly, with maybe the exception of Demidov, but basically all their other guys, like last night there was a power play, Nick Suzuki skating the puck off the ice, and the puck just bounces off his stick, and he has to stop, go get it, pass it, and it just throws the whole rhythm off. It's like how does that? What is that? How do you? So, I think in some ways you have to guard against just chalking it up to that. We heard 2 games in a row Marty talk about execution. He's not wrong. There's no execution because they can't make a pass and they can't make a play. Like, they can't play with the puck right now. And you can see it with your eyes. So when he says lack of execution, you're like, yeah, probably. It would be foolish to just lean on that and just be like, okay, yes, there's a lack of execution. Yes, we look rusty, or we just look like suddenly inexplicably less good at hockey, like on an individual basis.
When you say we, it's the royal we, right? It's not you.
The royal we, yeah, not me. No, I have no idea. But it's you can't only accept that as the reasoning. There's other things beneath the surface, and frankly, I think the power play is one of them. I agree with you. The power play was going to come back to earth. However, the common thread in a lot of these games of late has been the Canadiens' opponents taking advantage of their power play, and Dallas has one of the best in the league, and they did that last night despite a terrible first period on their part and a really good first period from the Canadiens. The Dallas Stars were up because their power play converted. The Canadiens' power play, even the game against the Kings, they had a 1 minute 5-on-3 in the first period, more than a minute, and they got one shot on goal.
I remember after the game, someone asked Marty something about a superstition. Do you believe in this or that? I can't remember what it was, but I had
Do you believe in certain teams? Do you believe in certain teams just having your number? Is what he was asked.
That's it. Well, I had another superstition question that I decided not to ask, But there's a real feeling that when you don't convert on a 5-on-3, you're going to lose the game. It happens
Oh,
so
you're definitely going
often.
to give up a goal.
Yeah, and it's going to come and bite you. Teams that
Yeah.
don't score in a 5-on-3 lose games so often because it really is a telling sign that you're not going to be opportunistic tonight. And they sure were not. And it was, I mean, it was, I must say, at 5-on-4, maybe not the 5-on-3, but at 5-on-4, the Kings played the Canadiens power play to perfection. The pressure that they were putting on Montreal was a thing of beauty. And I don't think any team has played the Canadiens power play better than the Kings. But 2 nights after, the way that they isolated Demidov, I think that Dallas did that. Maybe they took a page off from LA's book. But again, I go back to shooting, man. To me, it's really an issue because since the beginning of the season, right? When you look at shots per 60, the Canadiens are dead last in the league on the power play. They shoot 40. They have 40 shots, less than 41 shots per 60. And, at the top, you've got 5 teams that are over 60 shots per 60. So it's great that you pick your spots and you say we're not going to waste shots and we're going to find the correct opening and strike when it's time. Okay, but you better not miss the net when that chance presents itself, because for a low volume team, and I know that Marty has been taking exception to that notion in the past few days, but that's really the trend that they've developed. If you play like that on the power play, well, when there's an opportunity to strike, you have to take it. But at 40 shots per 60 on the power play, you don't put the odds in your favor.
Yeah, I agree. Speaking of superstitions, so Marty was asked, was it Monday, about the shooting percentage for sure going to regress. How do you prepare for that? And he's like, well, I'm not going to go in the room and say, well, guys, our shooting percentage is bound to go down, so let's do this and this, and then power play regression, obviously the health. On Thursday morning, he was talking about how he was asked by Eric Engels about his philosophy on changing lines, and he's like, well, part of it is that when you lose guys, then that's when you change lines, but we've been somewhat pretty healthy is what he actually said. And then bang, that night, Alex Newhook breaks his ankle. So it's but yeah, I think the power play and again, just to go back to it, but I just the one interesting comment from Suzuki, and I want to play with it more on my side.
Yeah.
I think what he meant by that, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I feel like what he meant is just the power play's got to run through me more. Like it's not even his side he's talking about his stick. There might be a lot of emphasis on trying to get the puck to Demidov, and when he talked about, I find we're in between and we wind up a little too perimeter, is when the puck goes up to Hudson and he's looking to get it to Demidov, and Demidov, that option is taken away, and he sort of has, as a plan B, has to go back to Suzuki or Caulfield on that left side. I think that's Nick trying to say, like, I should be plan A again, and we should stop trying to force feed Demidov. Like, Demidov's not going to get, especially based on the game that he just played against Dallas, when it was obvious they were trying to take Demidov away. Like, there was one time they passed it to Demidov and it landed right on the Stars' stick. Like, it was the best pass the Canadiens made all night. It was right on the tape, except it was to a Dallas player's tape, like, and it was out of the zone. So, when this group of 5 on the power play, yes, maybe they're not going to click. I mean, frankly, 25% is not an unsustainable power play percentage. Like, that's pretty much what the best power plays in the league more or less run at that percentage. Like, it's are the Canadiens one of the best power plays in the league?
No. Not 25% of opportunities.
Shooting. You mean
shooting percentage?
Yes, that is unsustainable. But they could and should be I think, one of the better power plays in the league. And
Yes.
they need to not go through stretches where they go 0 for 10 over a 4-game span. And not, but more than that is the timing of those power plays and the ability to collect momentum. They haven't gained the momentum, and they've given away the momentum on their penalty kill. And so momentum that they had earned at 5-on-5. And so, and when Marty talks about penalties, and we were talking earlier about Doc getting a bigger role, well, Doc's had a little bit of a bad run here of taking bad penalties. And so he's going to need to clean that up if he gets that increased role here. But yeah, I think the power play is one thing that is definitely hurting this team. Of course, the power play is not the one that's allowing 12 goals in a row. So we should talk about the goalies, because the whole city is talking about the goalies. And frankly, rightfully so. I don't want to say that in a dismissive kind of way. But what I think take issue with is I've seen a lot of reaction that, oh, they gave Monty the net to try and get him back, and now they've lost Dobesh because he sat for too long. And you're like, okay, maybe there's some validity to that. But as a coaching staff and as a goalie coach, you do have to take a longer view, I feel. And we've mentioned it before on the show, like, it's very rare to see a rookie goaltender just grab the net and run with it for a whole season. It's a very rare thing. It takes a long time for young goaltenders to be able to have the track record and the consistency to be a 50-game goalie or a 55-game goalie. So as great as Dobesh was, if you're looking at this realistically and historically, the Canadiens had to get Montembeault on track, and they had the luxury of having a good record and being able to, frankly, overcome some of his struggles to win some games where he wasn't at his best. But they had to get him on track. Like, I agree with that 100%. Like, this Canadiens team was not going anywhere and will not go anywhere if Sam Montembeault does not get his act together and does not play to his potential, which he would be the first to tell you he's not right now. Last night, the two people glaringly absent from the dressing room after the game were the two goalies who sit next to each other on one side of the dressing room. And they're being sheltered right now from a scrutiny standpoint, because it's clear that this city is in a tizzy over what's going on in their net. And I think it's kind of normal when a fan base is so accustomed to getting not just quality goaltending, but like borderline legendary goaltending. Like, I mean, it's, when you're used to having the goalie be your best player, I think it's normal to lean on that. Excuse me. But I think the long-term priority of trying to get Sam back on track was not misguided, and it should not be the reason why Dobish played poorly last night. You're a backup goalie. You need to learn how to be a backup goalie.
Yeah, and it's not as if he sat for 3 weeks, right? It's just that at a time where things were going rather well for Dobish, he ended up not playing for 2 games in a row, because he played at home against the Kraken. They won. And then came back to Monty for the game against the Sens. And then after that, which was entirely expected. And then Marty came back with Monty for that game against Philadelphia, where the whole team played bad. So that was 2 games in a row for Monty. And then after that, you've got that game in New Jersey where famously Dobish was emotional after the game. He had not played according to his standards. Then he got 2 more games of Monty, and then you come back again with Dobish because he had time, I guess, to come back from was what might have been perceived a distraction or a story that had gotten way out of proportion. But anyway, he was back in the net against the Stars. So to me, playing once every 3 games is not outrageous, especially in the within the realm of we want to have both of our goalies working. It should not take the fact that you're sitting an extra game that all of a sudden the wheels
lose
fall
everything.
off.
Well, that's it.
No,
and he's the backup. This is a normal cadence of work for a backup goaltender. Like, this is not a matter of the Canadiens losing Dobeš. And if it is, well, then that's a problem. Because if you can't go 2 games without playing, or if you go 2 games without playing, you completely lose everything. Well, then you're not set out to be a backup goaltender in the NHL. Like, this is not a long absence, And so,
well, he's a rookie. He's not just a backup, because I think at some point he's good enough to be a number 1, but he's a rookie. And that's you still have to take that into consideration, that it can be a lot, and he's a rookie for the Montreal Canadiens, for God's sake. It's not an easy task. But that being said, Samuel Montembeault is not Carey Price. I don't think that he's invulnerable as a number 1 goalie. And as much as it is unlikely to see a rookie goaltender take over the number 1 job in his first full season in the NHL, I think that over an 82 season schedule, you can allow the hot end to take over for a while and give time to your regular guy to find his game. So if at some point, they did that. Well, they did that. They basically they more or less split 50-50. I don't think
but you remember, like, Dobeš playing the back-to-back games in Vancouver and in Seattle gave Sam basically a full week, to find his game.
I'm not talking about what they did. I'm not talking about a week. I'm talking about a month of
what the hell? You're not going to sit your number 1 goalie for a month. When have you ever seen that happen?
No. I'm not sitting him for a month, but giving Dobeš more starts than Monty for a period of time. Like, okay, we just mentioned Carey Price, right? Back in the day when Halak was there, before that famous run, in the later part of the 2009-2010 season, after Alan Walsh got into an uproar, public outcry for his client to play more, Halak did play more down the stretch in the regular season. Earlier in the year, if you have Dobeš playing more games than Monty for a month, it doesn't mean that Monty is not your number 1 goalie anymore. I think that, again, just because it's a long schedule, and actually the earlier in the season that you do it, the less harm it can do, both in terms of how it looks and how Monty can, quote unquote, recover from it. But the reality is, right now, I totally endorse the idea that you had to manage Montembeault to make sure that he finds his game again and he can be as good as he was last year. But right now, neither of the two are stellar. And I don't think that it's because of Monty that Dobeš all of a sudden is not as effective. But he struggled against New Jersey, and yesterday, I mean, it was what it was. Right now, instead of having both of your goalies, going at full throttle, you're looking for one who's going to help bail out the team. So whoever's going to be that guy, who's going to be the first one to raise his level and be that goalie for the time being, for a period of a few weeks, you ride that guy, whoever it is. That would not change that down the road they perceive Montembeault as their number 1 goalie.
Dobeš, in his first 4 starts, did not allow 3 goals in any of them. In his last 4 starts, he's given up at least 3 goals in each of them. So it's more than just the last 2 starts. Yes, I mean, he was pretty good in Vancouver, but and the 3rd goal came on a 6-on-5, which we've mentioned many times is a weakness of this team. Seattle, is the more troubling one. Those 3 goals in the third period, one of which also was a 6-on-5, but still the Canadiens had a 3-0 lead. They give up 3 goals, but I think also Dobeš gave up 3 goals, and in a time when they needed him to sort of back him up and sort of close out a win. Winds up getting that win in overtime, obviously, but was maybe an early sign. And Dobeš was very annoyed with how he played in that third period. Like, he was very upset. It was kind of a precursor to the New Jersey reaction to losing that game in Seattle. He was also very, very upset with himself. He wasn't crying, but he was not happy with how he played, despite the fact that they won and but giving up those 3 goals in the third period was a thing. So I think I hear you that they can ride the quote unquote hot hand. I mean, right now they don't have a hot hand, so
that's it.
They need to, but it's managing goaltenders. Like, we've talked a lot about, the politics of managing the power play and who plays on it and who doesn't, and all sorts of things, and why Marty waited 20 games to put Lane Hudson on PP1 last year, and why he waited 8 games or whatever it was this year to put Demidov on PP1. The status of number one goalie comes with certain expectations from that goalie. And when you're not performing to that level, which Monty clearly hadn't been and still isn't, you can't naturally expect to get endless amounts of benefit of the doubt, but you can expect to get some. Your track record is worth something. Again, yeah. And to be like, this is why I think, he didn't say it hurt him, but I think it did. Like, the mock cheers in which game was that? That was the Ottawa game? No, that was the Philly game.
Yeah.
The mock, yeah, it was Noah Cates, his shot from just past the red line against Philly. And frankly, we heard it a bit last night in the Dallas game. It wasn't quite as audible, but it was definitely audible. There was a bouncer from center ice that I can't remember which player, but that the Stars put on net on Montembeault, and there was a cheer when he stopped it. So, I think he's dealing with a lot of things, most significantly being the fact that he's not able to figure this out at this point. Like, he knows he doesn't have a margin for, like, he knows he can't allow himself to have a margin for error. And it's hard for him to find a certain level in this environment that he's never experienced before. He's never gone through something like this.
No.
Where the whole city is questioning his ability to play this position. His work is not up to par. Like, this is all brand new to him. And
someone was mentioning that he turned off his he closed his Instagram account because he was getting so many.
He just stopped looking at Instagram.
Okay.
I don't think he closed it, but he mentioned, I was there, and he mentioned someone asked, like, do you look at social media and stuff? And he was like, yeah, I turned off. I think he might have turned off notifications on his Instagram account. I don't think he shut it down. I mean,
okay.
Well,
that's something that
basically
Matheson has been praising for his young teammates.
Yes,
saying, guys, just stay away.
Well, basically, what he said was nothing good happens on there. That's what he said. Il y a rien de bon qui se passe là-dessus. So I was like, yeah, you're right. 100%. You're 100% right. So we'll see.
Yeah, but there's no easy answer out of this. I think that collectively the team needs to stop giving so many grade A chances off the rush, and that would be a start to help both Montembeault and Dobeš. But I mean, I still believe in those two goalies personally, and I think that Montembeault at some point is going to be who he is, but he got progressively better over the years, and I thought, it was interesting to see how good he could become. Would he stagnate at some point, or would he just continue to get better? Right now, what we're seeing is a short-term regression. As you say, it's the first time that we see that. But I mean, it's going to be Dobesh has his own challenges being a first full year goalie in the NHL, and I don't know. Maybe I'm jumping the gun here, but if that situation would continue in any way, well, this is why you got a guy like Capo Kekkonen who could be called up and play a couple of games and give a breather to everybody, because he's not he's a number 3, so because I would rather they keep Jacob Fowler down there and let him develop his thing. He's got a good runway in front of him in Laval. Let's leave it like that. But those two goalies right now, it's good challenge for Eric Raymond because he's got two guys to work with right now and work on.
Bringing up Capo Kekkonen is officially DEFCON 1. We were at DEFCON 2 earlier. This is DEFCON 1. Bringing up Capo Kekkonen at this point, I think we're very far away from from that. That is DEFCON 1. So yeah, but yeah, it's there's no real answer there. Okay, let's wrap it up. That was a busy week for the Canadiens. This is our first. This game Saturday, I don't think it can be understated. It's quickly become a critical game for them. Obviously, you give up 12 straight goals at home, you get embarrassed twice in a row at home. You have the Bruins coming in, who are off to an excellent start, but frankly are not as good as their record. Much like the Canadiens were not as good as their record heading into this week. And so, if they get embarrassed by the Bruins on home ice on Saturday, then that's DEFCON 1, right? Like that's really DEFCON 1, because that's going to be that would be, if that happened, a whole other level of shame, I guess. It's something that the Canadiens can't allow to happen. But and just as an aside, I wonder if he just stayed here, because Don Sweeney was at the game Thursday. He was also at the game Tuesday when Doug Armstrong and Julien Brisebois were there. He stayed. Either he stayed or he went somewhere and came back for the game Thursday. Couldn't have liked what he saw in either game. I mean, I thought Suzuki was fine, like other than the obviously fumbling the puck a little bit and not being as sharp as he normally is. But
the Canadiens in general have not been good on nights where Don Sweeney was in attendance.
Yes, and he's been in attendance many times. Doug Armstrong came twice in a week. And obviously Julien Brisebois joined them coming off the GM meetings in Toronto. But yeah, it was a bad week for the Team Canada brass to be there. But I think they're working off more than 2 games, right? It's not but I got to say it would be absolutely shocking if Sam Montembeault was named to the Olympic team at this point, even though there's 6 weeks until they have to name their team. And I guess he can turn it around. I shouldn't say that. He can turn it around by then. But man, it's hard to see how this season has gone so far and believe that he's going to be one of their top 3 picks to go to Milan.
I think when those 3 guys, Armstrong, Sweeney, and Brisebois were there on Tuesday, if they were looking at a goalie, I think they were looking at Darcy Kemper a lot more than at Sam Montembeault.
Well, I mean, the way the game played out definitely lent itself to that. I think they were there to see both. And frankly, it was a beautiful 2-for-1. You get to see them both go head to head. Kemper looked great. Sam did not. And so it's like, and did not look great last night. He comes in the third period, a game is lost. Essentially, the first shot he sees is not a high danger shot. It's not a shot that should go in. And it wasn't consequential. It didn't prevent the Canadiens from mounting some sort of miraculous comeback. But still, you'd like to see him make a save on a shot like that. It's like, come on.
But I beg to differ on the fact that the game against Boston is pivotal. To me, I see the
critical.
Critical.
Yes.
It's even worse.
Well, pivotal suggests like a pivot point in the season. I don't think it's a pivot point in the season. I just think it has heightened importance more so than a regular Bruins Canadiens on a Saturday night.
Yeah. Well, I think that I would take the group of the next 4 games as being critical, because the important thing for Montreal is that by the time that they leave for that trip to Utah, Vegas, and Colorado, they need to have found their game back by then. Because if they're still in trouble and they're still lost, they're going to get eaten alive during that trip. So it might not happen necessarily tomorrow against Boston, but I take that group of next 4 games, Boston, then a short trip to Columbus, then they're back against Washington and Toronto, the beatable Maple Leafs. Those 4 games, that's where they need to find their mojo back and really channel their Austin Powers selves, and so that they get ramped up and ready to go for what's going to be from that point on a very road heavy schedule, starting with 3 very tough games in Utah, Vegas, and Colorado. So yeah, it's always important. Saturday night against Boston, the next game is always the most important, but the DEFCON 1. I'll look after the next 4 games rather than just on Sunday.
If you don't think it's going to be DEFCON 1 if they lose 8-0 to Boston on home ice on Saturday, then I don't know what to tell you.
Whoa! Who spoke about 8-0?
Well, I just said they can't get embarrassed on home ice by Boston after getting embarrassed on home ice by Dallas and getting embarrassed on home ice by LA. That's all I'm saying. If that same scenario repeats itself on Saturday, that is DEFCON 1.
Oh yeah, but I find it very unlikely to happen though. You rarely get embarrassed 3 games in a row. We're
gonna clip this.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think it goes back to the end of the Dominique Ducharme days where it happened. They've been because
it happened last season. What are you talking about? They got smoked by the Penguins. I guess it was 2. That was 2 games. Penguins Rangers at home. 8-2, 9-2, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, there was a 9-2 against Pittsburgh for sure.
Yeah. And there was a Rangers game that was 8-2. I don't have it in front of me, but
I think it was a 7-2. But I don't think there were consecutive losses that were that bad, because I mean, yeah, there was. Let's see. Anyway, no, I get it for sure. If the Canadiens lose 8-0, it's going to be a whole different ball game. But if they happen to just lose, that's fine. It's going to be right now they're lost in the woods. They have to find their way back. That's all right. I just don't.
It was not consecutive games. By the way,
that's it.
It was 7-2 to New York on home ice, 8-2 to Seattle 3 games later on home ice. And the Pittsburgh one I think came later. 9-2 was in December. So
yeah, that's it.
It was spread out, but they had some bad ones last year. That was one of the funnier parts of the post game after Dallas is the players being asked like, "Oh, you have experience in this. Like, how's that going to help you get out of it?" And you can just see like the players in their minds like, "Yeah, I guess we do." Yeah. So yeah, hopefully we know how to stop that, because that 8-2 loss to Seattle was the start of a 6-game losing streak. And that was the next game was the Halloween game in Washington where they threw up all over
the back skate. Yeah.
Yes. And so they still lost their next 4 games after the bag skate. People tend to forget that. But the way they played improved dramatically after that. But yeah, it's that was a completely different version of this team. And so I think maybe that was a bit of a wake up call to the players. Like, we went through that. We don't want to go through this again.
No. And they've got the resources to prevent that from happening. But it just doesn't look good right now. Doesn't look good at all. That's okay. It's November for a reason. All right, I'll go. I'll let you go. Drink some water and recover with that throat of yours. And
it's not good.
Yeah. All right. Good. So thanks a lot, everybody, for tuning in, and we'll be back on Monday for another edition of the Basu and Godin Notebook. Have a great weekend.